Let's get straight into this, because the story that is building in what's been the last couple of weeks quietly behind the scenes, Caroline, has been what do we do with the grand final and with the shutdown that happens tonight at midnight in Victoria for at least 6 weeks. And we say 6 weeks at least because that is the minimum. There's every chance it could go longer if things don't get under control. What does that mean for a grand final and the final series? Let's discuss what the ramifications are of the shutdown of Victoria as far as the grand final is concerned.
Well, we'll kick off with the grand final, Ed. I think that there's every chance now, and I know it came up in the President CEO's hookup this morning, that the grand final will leave Victoria. I know you've been very strong that there's a contract in place and it won't move, but I think you've changed your position too, given the situation.
Can I just say this? And it is the AFL grand final will be played at the MCG. Unless it can't be, unless there's no crowd. And now everyone is opening up their minds to what could be.
So Sydney is framing as the favourite at the moment. Obviously, this would be a fantastic thing for the AFL's push into the northern markets. ANZ Stadium seems to be the ground where, and here we're looking at the 2016 qualifying final, where they got 60,000 people, saw the Giants.
They got 75,000 there, Caroline, for Collingwood and Sydney that time, when it was a one-off game. When there was one game of football, it was the record crowd at that stadium.
And this is 60,000 for GWS, which was unbelievable. But anyway, I think that they were going to tear the stadium down, Ross. They were going to reconfigure it again. That hasn't happened for financial reasons. Sydney have made a strong push, and Sydney are the flavour of the month with the AFL at the moment because they've done the right thing by the AFL. Gladys Berejiklian in letting the players move into Sydney and keep the AFL season alive, really, Ed. So I think Sydney are very much in there. Let's have a listen first, though, to the Queensland Tourism Minister and what she had to say today, Kate Jones.
I think we could definitely play the card that the fact that we've worked so hard to make the AFL team safe here in Queensland, it'd be great if they could see that as giving us an edge on securing the AFL Grand Final.
So Gillan has said, I gather, to the clubs, Gillan McLachlan, the decision will be made in August. It won't go to the club that finishes highest on the ladder. They'll do a deal with the government. Obviously, it will be a financial windfall for a competition that needs one, Ed.
Caroline, it's an interesting one because the Queensland government offered the NRL $20 million for the NRL Grand Final, which was knocked back. Now, whether they've still got $20 million in their kick is another question, but there was $20 million. Victorian government spends $60 million on the Grand Prix every year, so there's big money in these things. The economic impact of having a grand final anywhere outside of Victoria for one off season is big money.
What do you think, Ed?
Well, I think the other thing with it, Matt, just before I get to that, is don't forget if we can get 75,000 into ANZ Stadium or 60 over it in Perth or whatever the case may be, you're talking about could be an extra $50 million for that coming back in. There was about $25 million conservatively. That's what the AFL told the clubs in 2010, Ross. I think we got ripped off in that day. But I reckon 25 for the replay for that grand final jumped in then. That's 10 years ago. If you think you can get all the corporates, you can get the signage, you get the crowd, the TV and the full parade up there, then they're going to push. And I think, Caroline, your point is right, that the AFL is saying this is an opportunity. For all the negative of COVID-19, it has been a boon for the national competition, particularly in the northern states, where with everybody up there, it's the talk of the town. It's almost Peter Volandi's worst nightmare in this situation. He's got what he wanted. He's got everybody up there and everyone's enjoying what's happening. But most importantly, the TV audiences in Queensland for the AFL, as the Broncos have been struggling in Brisbane and the Gold Coast and the Brisbane Lions have been doing so well, are off the charts. Thursday night, AFL is beating NRL by 30% in the ratings.
And a level of disappointment too, Ross, I've got to say, not so much in West Australia, who've been firm from the beginning, but also South Australia, who had an opportunity to welcome clubs in and said no. I'm not saying the AFL's angry, but they're a bit bemused that they were knocked back.
Well, to Kate Jones' point, I like her point. We've worked for you. Now work with us. It looked
nice where she was standing.
It was beautiful, but Queensland have got our teams in, kept the competition going. The NRL heartland Sydney has, whereas our football states have shut the borders on us. So, to me, it's David Parkin, great premiership teams, work for and with. So you've worked for us, we'll work with you, and I think she's got a really pertinent point, whether it be New South Wales or Queensland. Let's reward the people that have helped this national football competition thrive. And
Ross, it's not all over for the South Australians or the West Australians, but at the moment, you couldn't have a grand final there where you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Now, as we've said, as I said here last week, things change by the week, and as I said in the opening, changes by the day at the moment.
But I don't think they were offering the millions of dollars WWOS. They were thinking, well, it's WARSA. Well, guess what? You've got competition and they want to look after the AFL.
If you get $50 million and square up with the MCC and the state of Victoria, don't forget that the state of Victoria has underwritten the competition, then there is something there. But I know that the Victorian State Government is still adamant they desperately want to get it, but I think everybody has come around in the last couple of days to the fact that if you can't get a crowd there and you can't have the build-up and you can't have the parade, you can't have everything else, then it might be time to have a look at other options.
And